Hey y'all, welcome to a new What's for Dinner where I'm going to show y'all everything I fed my family for dinner last week. So this night was Halloween, which is also my daughter's birthday. So I definitely wanted to make something special, something I knew she would love, and I just also wanted to make something really good and hearty before we all went trick-or-treating. So I am making vegetable soup. This is also one of my favorite foods and honestly one of my favorite things to make. This is my recipe. I have been making it the last few years just like this. So the first thing I do is I get my meat cooking, as y'all seen in the first clip. I either use ground beef or ground chuck. I did use ground chuck this night. I only use a pound for this recipe. We really like the ratio of that, but if you want it to be more meaty, definitely you can go up to 2 pounds. I also like to use a pound just because it cuts down on the price. If y'all noticed, that package of meat was almost $6 just for slightly under a pound. I live in a small town. We only have one grocery store, which is Save a Lot. So, of course, the prices are going to be a little bit more. I do prefer to go a town over to do most of my grocery shopping, but if I don't plan out my meal plan and make a grocery list like very well, I end up going to Save a Lot, which is fine. Like if you think about the gas prices to go a town over and back. And also, I do think it's important to support local businesses, but now I'm just getting sidetracked. So here I am chopping up some veggies. So I like to do 2 carrots. I don't want any like too big pieces, so I do dice it up. I also do 2 russet potatoes that I wash and peel. And then I like to do a small head of cabbage. The cabbage to me is what makes the soup. It's my favorite part, and I love the flavor that it adds. So now that I've got that chopped up, back to the stove. As you can see, that ground chuck is about halfway brown through. That's when I like to go in and season it. So I'm doing some salt. I recently switched out the iodized salt to like fine sea salt, so I kind of have a hard time getting that to come out. But I'm also adding in some pepper and some onion powder, and I'm just going to let that finish cooking. So now that it's completely brown, I'm going to add in a big spoonful of minced garlic and just cook that in for a couple of minutes. I did use a leaner meat, so I didn't have to drain off any grease, but if you're just super greasy, definitely drain it. But now I'm going to go ahead and add in all of those vegetables that I chop. I like to give these like a head start since they take longer to cook, especially the carrots and cabbage. I like those to be super tender in this, so it has kind of a long cook time, but not really. So normally I use like the big container of V8 tomato juice, but a friend gave us some like homemade canned tomato juice, so I was really excited to use that. I was saving it for this recipe, and I thought that was very special. But now I'm going to season this heavenly with some onion powder, garlic powder, some salt, and lots of black pepper. I'm going to get that stirred in very well, and my heat's on about medium high. I let that come up to a boil, and then I add it on a lid, and I let that simmer anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes. I don't remember exactly how long it took, but I like to do that until it's almost completely tender, and this is the point when I like to go in with my canned vegetables. So I like to do a can of peas, a can of corn, and a can of green beans. So I did get all of those drained and then added into the pot. After I get that incorporated, I'm going to wait for that to come up to a boil again. Then I will add that lid back on. I do like to vent it a little bit because I don't want it boiling over since it is pretty full. And it took about 30 more minutes to get to the tenderness that we like. So here it is after it is completely finished. As you can see, it is fully loaded. There is still plenty of liquid in there. This is just absolutely delicious. I will have this recipe written out in my description box in case anyone wants to screenshot it and make it. This is a very common meal where I live, but of course everyone does it a little different. So if you do make it my way, definitely let me know what you think about it. I like to serve mine up like I do my chili. So I like to do some shredded cheese, and I also like to crush up some saltine crackers and put it in there. We always like to serve it with either grilled cheese or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. This night we wanted peanut butter and jellies, and remember this was Halloween, so I did get this like witch's punch kit at Target. It was overpriced and it was not good. It tasted good, but I thought it was just like a regular green apple punch, but it was like a slime punch. So the consistency of it will make your stomach turn. But Boston loved it, and I was just trying to do something special for Halloween that they would always remember. But anyways, we all really enjoyed this meal, and it's one of those that makes for really great leftovers. Next up, I'm going to be making smash burgers for the first time on the Blackstone. I was very excited about this. So the first thing I did was butter and toast up my hamburger buns. So I have the grill on a low heat, but these still like cooked up insanely quick. I didn't even have time to hit the record button again for when I was taking these off the grill. I came a hair of burning them, but I didn't, thankfully. So now I've bumped that heat up to medium. I've added some avocado oil and just got that spread out in a thin layer. This is that same ground chuck that I showed for the vegetable soup, but it's closer to 2 pounds. And I did roll these out into 3-ounce portions, and I did use a food scale to help me with that, just to make sure that these were all like equal in size. So I got those all added to the hot grill, and now it's time to press them. So I just have a piece of parchment paper to prevent this burger press from sticking. And I did order this burger press off of Amazon. I will definitely link it in my description box. I really liked it. Worked really well. But I have only used it once, but I'm really glad to have that so that I can continue to make this for all the years to come. So now I'm going to season it with this Superland seasoning that I have been bragging on lately. It just has all of your like basic seasonings all in one. And I just find it easier to grab one bottle versus several, and I just love the flavor of it. But now I'm going to get these turned. These cooked up so quick as well. I did make sure to kind of scrape it up before flipping to make sure that they don't like completely fall apart. But as you can see, it has developed this beautiful crust. And now I'm just adding some American cheese on top, and I'm going to double these up. So I did have one random one that didn't get doubled up, and I just ate that for lunch the next day, like without a bun. Still very good. But I did get these added onto the buns, and at this point I realized that I should have closed the lid to melt that cheese better before adding the second patty to it, but I wasn't thinking. But these are done, and they are ready to go in the house. So here's my plate. I added some mayo and mustard, as well as a tomato slice and some pickles. I served it with a Caesar side salad that was just left over from the week prior, and we just had some Rally's French fries, and I didn't show it. I guess I was just too excited for the burger, but I also baked up some of the Nathan onion rings. My husband's like all-time favorite meal is cheeseburgers and onion rings, so he was super happy, as well as all of us. These turned out incredibly good. I actually prefer a thinner patty, so I thought these were the best burgers I have ever made. The next day, we went and visited my parents, and my dad made one of my favorite things that he cooks, and that is pot roast. It was so tender with carrots and celery. I topped it with some A1 sauce, and there's some homemade mashed potatoes, cornbread, green beans, and mac and cheese. Up next, I'm going to start by sharing this side dish recipe first because it is one of our favorite side dishes and I have not made it in a while. So this is some broccoli and cheese rice. If you've been here a long time, you've seen me make it. But I first wanted to start by showing like the rice that I typically buy, just for those new cooks out there who may not know what to grab. I really like this Great Value long grain one, and I'm cooking up 1 cup of it, and I'm just following the directions on the back of the package. So a lot of times I'll use like a chicken bouillon paste, but I didn't have any, so I'm using this garlic one that we really like, and it worked out great in this recipe. I definitely recommend that for some extra flavor. You'll need 1 bag of frozen broccoli. I'm just going to steam that in the microwave, and I recommend making sure that you buy the florets and not the cuts, because if you get the cuts, you're mainly just getting the like stalk of it, and that's just not as good in my opinion. But you'll definitely want to go in with some scissors and chop that up into finer pieces. That is what works best for this dish. I'm also going to take this 1 pound block of Great Value version of Velveeta, and I'm only going to be using half of it, so 8 ounces. I'm going to dice it up, and I'm also going to add in 2 tablespoons of melted butter, followed by that cooked rice. So I like to kind of spread it out and let it sit there and steam for a few minutes to like help melt that cheese down. And the way I season this is different every time, but on this day I did some Tony's Creole seasoning, black pepper, and onion powder. You'll also need 1 can of cream of chicken soup and a good splash of milk, about half a cup. And I'm just going to stir this together really good. And as you can see, that cheese is already starting to melt pretty good, but it's not a big deal. It'll finish melting in the oven. So normally I spray my dish with Pam, but I'm just using this like empty butter wrapper because there's always still a good amount of butter left on it. So that's what I greased my dish with. And I got all of that dumped out, and I'm just taking the back of my wooden spoon and I am getting that spread out into an even layer, which is important. You don't want half of this to be like thin and then all thick in one part. It just won't cook even. But I'm going to cook that at 350 degrees for 45 minutes, and this is the end result. I'm telling y'all, this is so delicious. My broccoli hating family love this. They all went back for seconds, and I definitely wanted to talk about this before the holidays because I think it is perfect for Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, anything like that. So I'm also going to be making some steamed cabbage. So in my Instant Pot, I put in a half a cup of chicken broth, a couple tablespoons of butter, and I just chopped up the rest of that cabbage I had left over from the vegetable soup. And I'm seasoning it very simply with just some salt and pepper. And I'm going to let that cook for 6 minutes, and then I'm going to do a natural release. So this is another one of those super easy side dishes. It cooks it perfect every single time, full of flavor, and I just love it. So now on to the protein. This is going to be a 2-ingredient recipe that we have never tried before. Couldn't be easier. It's like a sweet and sticky Polish sausage. So I'm just taking 1 package and thinly slicing that up. I have some olive oil heating up in a skillet over there on the stove. Once it was nice and hot, I dropped in the sausage, and I'm just going to cook this around for a few minutes just until it starts to develop some color and get some of those nice brown tasty bits on it. And for that second ingredient, we're going to be using some Coca-Cola. I use half of that bottle. I don't know who would have thought of this recipe, but I'm so glad to whoever did because it was honestly incredible. I let that simmer for about 20 minutes. You'll want that liquid to completely reduce. And as you can see, it is like stuck to the Polish sausage and made this really beautiful glaze. This was so good. Such a huge hit. Every bit of it was gone. The kids loved it. Of course, the broccoli and cheese rice was good. Like I said earlier, everyone went back for seconds. It's always just a hit. And, of course, the cabbage was good, too. On this night, I made an old favorite that I used to make a lot when I first got married. This is going to be a Ritz cracker chicken casserole. So in this bowl, I just have 1 rotisserie chicken that I chopped up, and I'm going to be adding in 1 can of cream of chicken, 1 8-ounce container of sour cream, which is a cup, and I'm just going to season this very well with some garlic powder and onion powder, just a little bit of salt, because remember the cream of chicken has plenty, lots of black pepper, and I'm just going to get that mixed together very well. I definitely want to make sure that every piece of chicken is coated in this creamy, flavorful mixture. So I'm going to dump this out into a greased 9x9 casserole dish. I have learned this is the perfect size for this recipe. I definitely wouldn't recommend like a 9x13, or else it will just be spread way too thin and you'll be eating more crackers than anything. So you do need 1 sleeve of Ritz crackers crushed up. I'm just evenly spreading that all over the top. Remember, there is lots of varieties of Ritz out there now, different flavors. I have done it with garlic butter Ritz crackers before, and that is very, very good. So for the last step, you just want to melt down 6 tablespoons of butter, and you'll just evenly drizzle that over the top. That's going to go in the oven at 350 degrees for 30 minutes, and that is it. This is a very simple recipe, very affordable, and it is a crowd pleaser. I served it with some homemade mashed potatoes, corn on the cob, and just some boxed mac and cheese. I know it's a very colorless meal, but it was delicious. For the last meal in this video, we are doing breakfast for dinner. So we're going to start off with some good homemade biscuits. This is my go-to buttermilk biscuit recipe. It's just 2 cups of all-purpose flour, a tablespoon of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to get the dry ingredients whisked together real quick, and then I'm going to take 1 stick of salted butter. I'm going to get that diced up and add it into that dry flour mixture. And I am using a pastry cutter to blend that butter into the flour better to really break it up into as small pieces as you can. And for the last ingredient, you just need 1 cup of buttermilk. So this is a very simple, basic recipe. It is a little messy. That's the only downside to it, but it is always worth it to make your own biscuits. There's just nothing else can compare to them. So after I got that mixed together, I dumped it out onto a floured surface. You can definitely do this straight onto your countertop. I've just always liked doing it on either a piece of wax paper or parchment paper. I think it makes cleanup a little bit easier. But you definitely want to make sure that it's well floured because it's going to be pretty sticky at first, but you just want to keep kneading it and folding it a few times to create those layers. Then I kind of just spread it out into a pretty thick piece, and I'm taking a pretty big biscuit cutter. I normally use a smaller one. Well, recently I just got these biscuit cutters. I've always just used like a mason jar, and that works really good, but definitely wanted some bigger biscuits this time. So I'm going to get those cut out and put onto a piece of parchment paper on a baking sheet, and these are going to go in a 450-degree oven. It definitely depends on the size and thickness of your biscuits on how long it'll take. I would definitely start checking around 10 minutes, but these took around 14 minutes. I would definitely like my biscuits to be a little bit more golden brown on top, but I'm always afraid of over baking them and drying them out. Like, I don't want that at all. I'm sure you could put some melted butter on top and pop them back in, and that would help, but it's already got a stick of butter in it, so I didn't really want to add more. But if anyone has tips for that, definitely let me know. But I'm also going to be making some air fryer like breakfast potatoes. I make these all the time. It's good with really anything. Very simple. So I normally use russet potatoes for this and most recipes, but all I could get was Idaho potatoes at the store, but they have been working just the same. I washed and scrubbed them very well, diced them up, added them to this bowl, and drizzled a good amount of olive oil on it. And you'll just season it to your liking. I do it different every time I make it. Again, this time I grabbed that Super Blend seasoning, and I'm going to add in some extra black pepper. And I also really like to use paprika when it comes to like roasted potatoes. I really like the color that it gives. I also really like to do parsley, but I just forgot it, I guess. But I got that mixed together and dumped out into a greased air fryer. And I like to cook these at 400 degrees, anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes. And it's important to come in halfway through and shake it. So to go along with those biscuits, I'm also going to be frying up some country ham. So this is definitely one of those things that I rarely buy. I get it like maybe once a year. It's definitely one of those things for us anyways that you have to really be in the mood for. If you are not familiar with country ham, maybe it's not a common thing to eat where you're from. It is definitely very different than like a regular ham. It has a completely different taste. It's a very salty piece of meat. If I had to really describe it, I would compare it to like a jerky. Like think beef jerky, but ham jerky. That's the best way I can describe it. It is really good though, especially paired with a buttery biscuit. That really helps balance out the saltiness. It's just not one of those things that you want to sit there and eat like 10, 15 pieces of because of its saltiness. So it's also something that cooks up very quick. Like the longer you cook it, the tougher it will be. So I like to do just like a couple of minutes per side at like a medium high heat. I like to add in a little bit of water towards the end because it just starts kind of like drying out. If you notice, I didn't add any oil to this skillet, and that also kind of helps draw out the saltiness. So I'm just going to get that removed to a separate plate. And I'm going to be frying up some eggs in this same skillet. So these eggs are going to be very seasoned with that country ham flavor. It makes it really good. So to that same skillet, I just added in a little bit of butter. I'm adding in a little bit of olive oil and giving that a good little swirl. So now I'm going to start cracking in my eggs. And my skillet is actually off at this point. I do not like to add eggs into a really hot skillet because then the egg whites get like really bubbly and crispy, and some people really like that, but Josh and I are not those type of people. But anyways, after a couple minutes, I do turn the heat back on to like a medium low. I season them with salt and pepper. We like eggs cooked like any type of way, but we really like them over easy. So got those flipped over, and after like 45 seconds, I removed it to a separate plate to stop the cooking. So last minute, I did decide to make this little country gravy packet. I cannot tell you the last time we have had that, but it is really good. Like, we really like it, and I think it's a great thing to keep on hand. We use that to dip the country ham biscuits in. It was absolutely delicious. The potatoes turned out perfect, really crispy and fluffy on the inside. I've been loving that jalapeno ketchup lately. It gives it a little spicy kick. And yeah, this was just overall a super good meal. Breakfast for dinner is always a favorite. We love all breakfast food, but we just don't have that big of an appetite in the morning, so that's why we like doing it for dinner. But that is all I've got for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that it was helpful with your meal planning. I want to thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I will see y'all next week with a husband's lunchbox video.